Good morning, everyone. It's Leah with the Modern Sage podcast. And I am so excited. I know I say that a lot on this podcast, but truly today I am really, really excited because I get to share the podcast with a friend and a very talented astrologer. So before we get to that, I just want to remind everyone, please follow on social media at Leah the Modern Sage. And our guest today, you can follow her. The information will be in our show notes. It'll be on the screen. We'll tag her in our post. She's a fantastic resource. And as you know, I only and always ever bring you the best. So we're talking about what to expect in 2025. We're talking about how to use more of the natural resources that we have in our lives, how to understand cycles, endings, beginnings, all kinds of things. And let me just go ahead and introduce you to Babs Cheung. She is an award-winning writer. She is an activist. And she is an Astro Translator. I think that's what you call yourself. Is that right, Babs?
That's right. Yep, right on the money.
Awesome. I'm so glad that you're here.
Thank you. I'm glad to be here.
Yeah, it's fun. Babs and I know each other from the speaking school, and we're both in the New York City area, but we haven't met up yet, but we're going to.
We're going to, for sure.
We're going to. Yeah. So I'm happy to have you here. So there's so much to cover. Astrology, I think, is a fascinating topic. A lot of people are interested in it. A lot of people don't understand the depth of the science of it.
Mhm.
And so then we just go to, like, our horoscopes for the day on whichever platform, app, or whatever that we can find. So let's put that over to the side for a minute because I want to really use your knowledge today to talk about a few things. I've got some specific questions, and we're going to start with a whopper of a question, which is what is going on in 2025 astrologically that will influence maybe all of us?
That is such a great question. And I think that deep down we all know the answer because it's just been blasted at us from all corners, from all areas. And it is truly this Pluto now officially in Aquarius.
Okay,
And
so what does that mean?
in the past, like around November election season, Pluto was in its very last degrees of Capricorn. And this was the changing of the guard. This is the shift in the power that goes from one party, not political party necessarily, but from one ideology to another, because Pluto is the planet of control and power and the systems that want to place that power and control us, essentially. It's actually quite straightforward and easy to think about. And so when it moves from something, an archetype that is Capricorn, that's more of your old world authority, patriarchy, oppressive regimes, even plutocracies, because the name, like it's in the root word plutocracy, meaning the ruling class, the powerful class. And now it has shifted to Aquarius, which the archetype is more so the collective, the people. So it's like the 1% versus the 99%. And we're seeing this in real time as Pluto is really easing in those 0 degrees as it continues to go into the Aquarius, the power shifting to the people. We're really going to feel more and more of this, almost like a Les Miserables kind of power, an epiphany where the people truly have the power.
Mm.
And I think that we're seeing it in the news. We're seeing it with the CEO murder. We're seeing it. There's like, I think, a copycat that was just reported yesterday. Obviously, this trial is going to be highly public. It's going to be talked about in many spaces. And this is just all an example of the way in which our collective is trying to gain that power back and really make moves toward a better, more equitable future. At least that's the big picture. We're still very much in the beginnings of the strokes.
So, okay, here's what I hear when you say that is that that we're moving toward a time period where the people will have more power.
Yes.
But I think, oh, great. Well, then we'll all just have, be able to do what we want, and everybody will get along, and it'll be a nice transition. But it doesn't go like that. And
No.
that's what we're seeing with all
Yes.
these outbursts, I guess, if you will.
Yes.
The changing of the guards, the transition of power to different places. It comes conflict. Is that the best word? It comes with conflict.
Yes, it does because yeah, well, I think we as human beings especially and this actually speaks well to healing as well. we're as many of us are on our healing journey, there's many people that have yet started.
Mhm.
And so for those people who happen to be in power and happen to want to hold on to their power, not a fully healed soul or not even beginning their healing journey, you could imagine that there's a lot of possessiveness toward power and this ego death. So there's so much ego death going on around us that it's just supremely painful. And I think you can speak a lot to that healing, that specific point in which we decide as souls, oh, I actually need to heal this
Mhm.
and all that. And then the ego kind of just dies on its own. But can you imagine a movement that kind of forces ego death? I think that's really scary for a person,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah, it is. And so this is what I mean. There's so much depth to all this. You and I could talk for hours and hours, but I'm going to try to streamline the questions. Even like this political transition that's happening in the United States. Of course, it does affect everyone in the world in some degree, and every other country has their own political issues and uprisings and falls and that kind of thing. And people continually ask me, what do I think about it? And leaving my personal preferences of whom I like and don't like aside, there's a part of me that can see the necessity of this person coming back into power to help us do just what you're speaking of now, to enter into this new age, because there has to be a protagonist. There has to be that,
Yes.
right?
Yeah.
Right.
Yes.
So it's like, how could it not be this right now?
Yes.
Ultimately, it's going to be for us if
Right.
we pay attention and do what we need to do. Right.
Exactly. Exactly so. I mean, and that is again similarly to put my biases aside, the the silver lining of having someone come back into power is that we are reminded that we have so much more work to do.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that there is this complacency that might have popped up had it gone a different way, in which the people might think, oh, we solved,
Mm-hmm.
power plays, we solved feminism, we solved all these things, all these world problems, when really it's a largely disguised band-aid that didn't really fix anything. So at least it's out in the open. The
Yeah. And the energy is there. The momentum is
Exactly.
there now. It's starting. And a lot of people are scared of it. But I just want to remind people, this is not the time to go back into our fear space. This is the time to do kind of the energy that you're sharing, which is learn how we can actually take power ourselves without the aggression, without the, murders, without
Yes.
the total uprising of conflict and so forth. But what does real power mean? And how do we hold on to that and use it in a beneficial way for everyone? Is that right?
Exactly. Yes, that's the major theme that's happening for 2025 that I see. Because as we're settling into this new place and this new idealism or ideology rather, it is it's deeply unnerving because you're used to one way for the past 30 years and then suddenly it's this new way, and I can't imagine the amount of change that has to take place in order to accept that. So I would treat like the first quarter of 2025 to really be that messiness, that feeling like when you're moving into a new space and it doesn't quite feel like home because you haven't unpacked anything. That's what the first quarter is. And then the second quarter, you've unpacked things and maybe you're shopping now for like the perfect little details to make your house a new home. And I think that's the best way to move forward.
Mm. That's good advice. Okay, so we went right into the some depth here about like Pluto and Aquarius. So one question about that is, how long does that last? How long does this transit last for us?
So Pluto moves in a little bit of a strange way. Most planets move about they go forward, they go direct, they station direct, they move forward in degrees, and then they move backwards, which is known as a retrograde. And then they spring forward again, and then they complete their transit. But because Pluto is an outer planet and it's the farthest planet away from us to the point where it's been declassified into a dwarf planet, it moves irregularly. And so this movement, it goes forward, it goes back, goes forward, go back over and over and over, can last up to 20-ish years. But we feel the effects of it to about like 30. Because again, it's that whole changing of the guard in that last 10-year.
Wow, that's a long time.
Yes, it is.
So
That's
this is like something we can expect to keep nurturing and growing and seeing proliferate.
exactly. Yes, great word. Yes, that's exactly it.
Wow.
Mhm.
Okay, so we went into this depth of like Pluto and Aquarius. A lot of people don't even know, like, they've heard of Pluto and they've heard of Aquarius, but it makes no sense to them. So let's
Sure.
back up just a little bit. And I'm not saying that they're ignorant, although ignorance isn't a bad thing. I'm ignorant about a lot of things. And quite frankly, I would never be able to talk about Pluto and Aquarius if it weren't for you being here today. All right. So I think one thing that be beneficial to everyone when they're looking at their own personal charts, and then we're going to get back to what's happening in 2025,
Mhm.
is most people know what their sun sign is. That's the sign of when you were born, like that was above you when you were born, correct?
Yes, the day. Yeah, it signifies the day that you were born.
The day that you were born. But
Yes.
then there's two other very prominent signs, which are your rising sign and your moon.
Yes.
Tell us about that.
Yeah, I love this is like my favorite topic to whip out at parties because the minds get blown and it's such a fun time. Um, so the sun sign for me, at least the way I define it, and this varies between astrologers. So if you have your own astrologer, they might define it differently, but this is how I've seen it play out. Your sun sign is who you are on your best day. So that is when you're feeling supported, taken care of, nourished, when you feel that your health is in good order, you're having a great hair day, the person in front of you has paid for your order, and you're in like one of those benefit, pay it backwards kind of situations. Like everything is going so, so good. That is when you meet your sun sign. That is when you meet your best self. And so if oftentimes I have clients who will say, I don't feel like an Aries, or I never felt like a Libra. Can you tell me why that is? And I always respond back and I say, well, have you ever felt cared for? Have you ever felt safe? Have you ever felt like you could truly shine in those ways, or has it always been that you have to put up a protective barrier between you and the world, because that will truly dictate how you present? And so we spend this whole lifetime trying to meet our best selves because it takes time. Would you agree that it takes about 3 good days to reach a best day, roughly?
Right. Yeah, I can for sure.
Yeah. And so even just to get to that one good day can be certainly a challenge. And so that is the best way for me to explain the sun sign. Whereas your rising sign is who you are naturally. You've woken up, maybe you're yawning, maybe you're stretching. You have yet to speak a word to anybody. You've yet to hear your own voice. And this is who you are in your natural state. And so it's representative of the time that you were born. So that's the rising sign. And then we have the moon sign, and the moon sign is who you are when no one is looking,
Hmm.
or who you are with your most trusted friends and confidants.
Okay,
So,
that's really interesting. Here's how I've understood it, and maybe part of it's correct and maybe incorrect. And I know there's no absolute right and wrong, and I hear you, and I also know there's a lot of different types of astrology available. I've understood it to be the sun, yes, when you were born and kind of your most high state of self, but that when we mature in age, that we often mature kind of out of that sign, and then we become more like our rising sign in our later years, and that our moon is kind of aligned with our emotional self, which I guess does is saying a similar thing of what you're saying is who you are with your best friends and who you are with other people. So you're more in your feels, you're more in your like transparency, authenticity, that kind of thing.
yes.
So is
I
there any accuracy to that other piece of?
I have not heard that. I know from my understanding, and this goes out of the three, the big three, is when we're talking about like moving on into older age and our mastery, so to speak, I always look at the North Node, which represents our achievement spot. So we're trying our whole lifetime to get to that
Mhm.
life purpose kind of prospect. And so, whereas like the sun sign, again, like this is just after lots of observation and anecdotal research, is that's the thing you're striving for, at least to support others in.
Interesting. Okay, so let me pause here and just remind everyone that Babs is available for readings and translations for your own chart. I know, to get the absolute specific chart, you need to have your birth time and location. And I think for some people that's a little frustrating because they may not know their birth time, but I was one of those people. And I don't even remember how I tracked it down. I think I called the hospital, the doctor, who knows, the birth certificate, whatever. I got the records and
Mhm.
found it. So you can find it.
Yes.
But if you
And
can't find it, what do you do?
if you can't, I do a service, and many other astrologers will be able to do the service as well. It's called a rectification. And this is where, well, I don't know how other people do it, but I ask a lot of questions about how your life has manifested thus far. And from there, I'm able to narrow the window of about, my record is now 4 minutes, which is good enough. But usually it's about 10 minutes. I'm able to really pinpoint it for you.
That's awesome. Okay. So I would just highly suggest for everyone, not only is it interesting, it's very, very helpful, which we're going to talk more about in just a minute. It's
Mhm.
fun because it gives us another resource, like I said, to understand ourselves and understand how we're interpreting the energies that are going on around us and so forth. I just think it's a great thing to do. So I want to encourage people to do that. And Babs is well trained, very artistic and insightful, and just a wonderful person that way. She and I sat on my couch. And with just a few minutes, we were talking about locations, and she also does geographical what do you call that, cartography, astrocartography,
Yes.
to help a person find where to live and so forth. And we didn't do a full reading, but just chit chatting, I could tell right away, okay, Babs knows what she's talking about. And her mind, just, it's like you were born with this mind to do this. So it's amazing. Let's pause that for a minute. I want to kick back over to the 2025. Is there anything else besides this massive Pluto and Aquarius where the power is coming back to the people, this 30-year cycle? Anything else that we should be aware of?
I think for a personal level, we should all be aware of the Mars retrograde, as it's finishing itself up right in, let me check here. Yeah, it finishes up in February. So February 24th is when it uh, begins its direct angle again, and is no longer retrograde. The reason why I bring this up is because we might be feeling frustrated, especially because this is the time of year when we think about New Year's resolutions. And I want everyone to take a deep breath and let go of that truly, just because the Mars retrograde transit is not in your favor to be creating new habits or new action plans to get to the goals that you want to get to. Instead, as it's now retrograding in Leo, I think that a lot of creatives, especially, are having a lot of writer's blocks or creative blocks. And it's because there's this weird pull to look back at old work and then to see if there's anything that has to be refortified or something that's calling to them that was a previous work. And this doesn't have to be creative, of course, but I think that when we look at our relationship to work, especially because Pluto had once been in, Capricorn, which values hard work and values the grind and the hustle, that it's best to take these next, 2 months in the new year to really pay attention to that relationship with ourselves and work. Like, does our work define who we are when we're asking people that we've just met, oh, what is it that you do for work? Like little moments like that, you should maybe check yourself to see if that truly resonates with who you are as an individual. Because I have a feeling with, again, in tandem with Pluto going into Aquarius, that we're not going to define ourselves by our work anymore. It's going to be what truly impassions us, what
Mm-hmm.
makes us feel motivated to wake up every day. And, if it is your work, that's amazing for you. That's fantastic. But for so many people, it's not work.
Yeah, I'm so glad to hear this one. It's a little bit of validation for what I heard from Spirit. I shared in a recent podcast, like what's in and what's out for 2025, and
Mhm.
also been sharing with my small groups and clients and so forth that there's this massive kind of what I would call in a workflow slowdown, like a downshift for the next couple of months. But also, there is this resurgence of getting more in touch with our creativity, our expression, and I think the way you're saying it is just the who am I
Mhm.
underneath the job, underneath the work, and what's most important to me, what do I value? And that's the real juicy stuff that I'm excited to
Yes.
see come out of myself and everyone that I'm around. It's like I called it like the a re-emerging renaissance period almost. It's like
Yes.
we're going to have, if we accept this, then there's a real potential here for a lot of beauty and productivity and creativity.
Yes, exactly. which is
Okay.
something to look forward to for sure.
Yeah, it's good. So Mars is the action is the planet of action,
Yeah.
correct?
Mhm.
Okay, so you're saying let's not make such New Year's plans and hope for starting new regimes and going gangbusters that way. This is the year to kind of slow down, reassess,
Well,
express.
until February. So I would say for Q1, definitely don't worry about turning a new leaf or anything like that. Just release, let go, be kind to yourself, and really reflect on how it is that you want to present or what projects are really making your heart feel alive, your soul feel alive. And then in Q2, around March, you'll begin to understand how to put those terms into action.
Okay. So like I have a book proposal to write to
Mhm.
finish. I started, but I need to finish it.
Okay.
And I have been like, whew, the Mercury retrograde, Mars retrograde. But
Yep.
I'm thinking, and I said this to someone else for them the other day, I was like, well, at least maybe when we go into Capricorn next week, that maybe there'll be a little bit of a spunk there for me to get into, some kind of gear to
Yeah.
finish that job. Is that right?
Yes, I would say so. I think that you'll find, yes, definitely a kick in the pants during Capricorn season, but I think you'll find your real juicy gems in Pisces season, which is around that time that Mars goes direct.
Okay, perfect.
So that'll be
So
great.
let's go back to the other things that are happening in the world. So we have Mars in retrograde. Don't we also have Venus going retrograde after that?
So Venus goes retrograde a little bit later in Q2. Here we are. This is an ephemeris. Um, and it explains, I'm reading this column here. This glyph represents Venus, and as you can see, it's moving forward in Aries.
Hmm.
So we're looking for a little tiny glyph that says, "Oh, you are correct. My apologies." So here yep, it's in Aries, and then it swings backwards
Right there.
retrograde right here. That is correct in March. Oh yes, March 2nd is when uh, Venus goes retrograde in Aries, and then it dips back into Pisces, and then it goes direct through Pisces on April 13th, and then it continues its forward momentum. And so, what this means is that I'd say up until March, our relationships may not be the smoothest sailing, but they are smoother sailing than they ordinarily would be because there's all this forward momentum, there's this progress. So you're building your relationships brick by brick. And then at some point there has to be a moment where you reflect and think, well, life has moved very quickly. Maybe there were some things that were falling through the cracks. This is a time to reassess. So that's usually the case for all retrogrades. It's a time to reassess because I mean, if life moved that quickly, I think we would all burn out for one.
Yeah.
And it would just be bad news for so many of us. So it's a good time. Retrogrades are a great time to reflect and rest and pull back and see, where can we improve on certain things, or rather, where can we maybe regain our energy back in places that it's leaking, like stuff like that. So I think in our relationships, you'll see again very fast movement, and then March is when it's like, oh my God, it moved too fast. Maybe we should work on some things here and like really fortify it and fine tune things.
I'm so glad to hear you say that because I think a lot of people have gotten afraid of retrogrades. They just want to poo poo them and, all the social media stuff that goes on about Mercury retrograde and whatever. But I sometimes really love retrogrades. I
Mhm.
love that period of like, okay, whew, let's slow it down. Let's pause for a minute. And it feels like a little gift, like, oh, I can take a minute here and look at things and reflect, as you say. So I think they're, I don't know, good is the right word, but I kind of like them.
I think as healers, we do appreciate that downtime because that's, I think, I mean, would you agree that's like when integration really happens? It's
Hmm.
that reflecting moment. And so if we didn't have those, those periods of time, I don't know if healing would take place. What do you think?
Yeah. Well, no, I agree. I call it like the vacuum. We have to have the
Mhm.
vacuum to be able to attract and pull in what is for us. Because if we always have our spaces filled, it's like we're just in an airplane recirculating the same energy, right?
Yes,
So
exactly.
yeah, I love those times. I love, and we know when we need them. It's
Mhm.
like our body talks to us, our emotions talk to us, our energy talks to us. So I think that they're great. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, so what else do we have? Anything else for the rest of the year that we should be like mindful of?
Yes. One of my other favorite things to talk about is Jupiter. So right now, Jupiter is it's retrograding right now in Gemini. So everyone, if you are a Gemini rising moon or sun, or you have placements in Gemini, this is a great time for wherever that might be for expansion and for luck and opportunity. And in January, it's still retrograding 13 all the way down to, I believe, 11 degrees. And then it stations direct in February, February 4th. And so, again, if we're talking about retrogrades, it's a time when old opportunities are revisiting you to tap you on the shoulder and say, hey, we still exist. And I think this is such a great point as to how you and I reconnected because this is within our Jupiter retrograde period.
Oh, I love that.
Yeah. And then as it goes direct, now new opportunities come in based on the work that you've been building to expand your horizons. So, for example, if Leah, I know that you're a speaker. If you were, working on this podcast, for example, and then Jupiter goes direct, perhaps then you'll see larger gains in your podcast, or you'll be invited to speak on another person's podcast, or just new, exciting, opportunities that regard what it is that you've been putting work in for the last like 4 months.
Okay. So when we're talking about things coming back into our lives, because I know this happens for a lot of people, obviously we're all people and we're all under these influences,
Yeah.
but some people really recognize them. And I have a couple of other situations that have, come back in business related primarily from long time ago, like from cycles, 16 years ago kind of thing. What is your suggestion? I guess you have to look at the rest of a person's chart. Do you encourage people, oh, this is a sign to look at this as a repartnership or as moving forward together, or is this more like to remind you of where you've been, what you've learned, how you've grown, and to not take it with you again?
Yeah, so I think it largely depends on the emotional state that occurs whenever you see this person or opportunity again. If the immediate response is a stress response, then I would say it's more of camp B, where you're looking to see how far you've grown and you want to really release that with love and congratulate yourself for graduating all those cycles ago, right? But on the other hand, if you are met with this surprising joy that this thing has popped up again, you had forgotten about it entirely. I think that that's something to explore because perhaps you weren't able to back then, but now you've grown to become the person who can now take advantage. And so it truly, I think, again, as healers, I think that it's always, our emotions are information, and that's meant to inform us on what's happening internally and, subconsciously as well, which is so important. And then from there, you can act. Does that make
That's
sense?
Yes, that's awesome advice. Yes. I remember this one situation who I'm connecting with today, actually. When I
Mhm.
saw the email come through, I was like, wow, would you look at that? And I'm sitting here trying to consider, was it a positive wow or a negative wow? And it was kind of both. It was like,
Right.
okay, I didn't screw that up entirely, or I'm still relevant in this way, or
Right.
look how far I've grown and come, all of that. I think so often, like I'm always saying, in relationships and business and our work, we're always looking at people and trying to figure them out and what are they thinking and how are they feeling? What are they doing? If you just turn that around in these circumstances and go, wow, what is this doing to me? How is this landing on me? What is my internal sensation? Like you're saying, what is my initial response? That's where we need to focus for
Yes.
our intuition and for our growth.
Yes. Yes, exactly. And don't be afraid to unpack that. Don't be afraid to take the suitcase and, make a whole mess out of it because what'll come is this natural organization, right? You
Yeah.
see a mess, and we as humans, we just, for the most part, we want order.
Yeah.
But we can't make order if something's already ordered for us.
So I don't know why this question just popped in my head. I know. So there's 12 traditional signs that we know of, but some of them get a really bad rap.
Yes.
Which one do you think gets a bad rap that really is misunderstood?
So I have a top three. I think the top three most hated, and I remember I typed this into like ChatGPT or something, like the most hated signs was at number one Leo, the second was Scorpio, and the third is Gemini.
Oh my God. Okay. So I'm a Gemini with the Scorpio rising, and the guy I was just dating was a Leo. So that's really funny to me. Okay. So
Yeah.
why, tell us why, and tell us why you think that's
Yeah.
untrue.
So I think that it really comes down to wounding, right? And the healing and the perceptions and the work we have to go into in understanding why some people are built the way that they are. And I think that wounding is really scary because it shows us how we're lacking in some way. So I think that Leos get a bad rep because people will often say like they're always the center of attention, they're attention grabby, they're always on, they feel disingenuous, like it just feels like a show for them. And really what that is informing is that maybe there's something within you that doesn't feel like you can express yourself as freely as a Leo might be able to. So that's the reason why it's showing at pain point.
Mm,
It's similar to Scorpio. Scorpio is has no problem putting up boundaries, no problem saying no to things, no problem secluding themselves and being selective. And I think that right there, that's a pain point for people pleasers, for people who truly are like, oh, no, 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 let me get this, let me get this, let me get this, and has all your energy in all these different pots. Whereas like Scorpio would just call all that stuff back and say, no, 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 no one gets my energy. Nope, just me, only me.
yeah. So then they're viewed as like crabby or bitchy or
Exactly, exactly. Or
too
like
hardcore,
just
too direct.
yes, or like stuffy or snobby or whatever it might be. But really it's just that they have boundaries. And then finally, Gemini will be, I mean, the number one thing that they always like to say is Gemini is two-faced. Or they don't have loyalty. They are social butterflies. They are chameleons. They just blend in everywhere, and they're very vapid or shallow or anything like that. When in actuality, I think it's more so that we're not allowing ourselves to be in this creative flow, in this energy of I'm able to change, I'm malleable, I am allowed to be one way with a certain group of people, and I'm allowed to be a different way with a completely different group of people because it's based on context. And Gemini thrives in context, which is why they're the best, social butterflies, best networkers that I've seen. If you want a community, if you want access to a community, find a Gemini. They
Mm.
have access to all these types of communities. And it really brings a joy to their life because they're multifaceted human beings. And so I think that from a wounding perspective, we might feel, oh, no, 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 this is the box. I'm going to live in this box. This is the only place I can go. Whereas like Gemini's like, no, we're gonna break free. We're gonna go everywhere. We're gonna party. And I think that we devoid ourselves of having fun, especially as we grow older. We're like, no, 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 we can't have fun. We have to be serious. Who says? Who says that?
Yeah. Oh, I'm so glad to hear you say that. I recently just said on social media, a lot of people think I'm crazy probably because I move so much and the way I live my life. I know it inspires people, but I also hear and sense them kind of quietly judging me. But the truth is, I'm a Gemini and I love change. I love new experiences, being malleable. Yes, all of that. And I don't want to live in a box. I think that, you know, I'm not a world traveler and just want to live out of a backpack because I need grounding and so forth. But I'm glad to hear you say that. And I think some people listening may have this similar example. Like I don't know, at least cognitively, I don't know a lot of Libras, for example. I don't find myself attracting a lot of Libras or Pisces, strangely, maybe more Pisces than Libras. But are you a Pisces?
No, no, I'm a Taurus, but that's
Oh,
funny.
sure. Yeah. And then, in other ways, like I'm full of Sages and Leos and Scorpios and Capricorns. Is that all kind of energetic by our chemistry or astrological chemistry that we attract
Yeah,
that?
I love this question. I've never heard of it before, so I have to think about this. I would say that kind of to reframe it a little bit is that oftentimes clients will ask me, I hate Leos. I can't stand them. And then I always say, well, this is like a pain point in your chart. So Leos reflect exactly that pain point, and that's why you don't like them because they
Mhm.
reflect back to you the experience that you would love to live, but you're, working on figuring out
Mhm.
how to get there. And so I guess in to flip it back to like attraction or the people that you bring into your life more so, I think it's there to support you. So that's there to activate you and bring out certain sides of your chart. And through that, I think it's always about creation. It's always about like this working together to create something new and fun and energetic that resonates with people. So I do think that, you know, the people that we call in or the people that we happen to get along with, it must be like a harmony point where you're meant to work together to create something beautiful.
Yeah. Oh, I love that.
Mhm.
So anything else the rest of the year? Any big flags to look for?
Yeah, I want to talk about the eclipses. So, eclipse season is upon us in the first half of the year. That is going to be March. March is pretty jam-packed for us. And the best way to describe eclipses is that it's related to the nodes of the moon. And I talked earlier before about the North Node, about that being a destiny point, and that's what we're all born underneath a specific North Node. And so we have certain gifts that we've mastered in our South Node. For you, I believe your North Node is in Capricorn, which means that your South Node is in Cancer. And so what it tells me is that you have mastered this way of making a home in many places.
Oh,
And and that it's and home is more so a feeling rather than a like a tangible place. And then by that virtue, you're able to make others feel at home in a way that I would guess people don't get to feel that way. And so there's this natural nurturing energy that you have that comes very easy for you. And in this lifetime, the mission is for you to kind of break out of that nesting phase and go toward an individual independent path and more in that leadership position.
and what does that mean exactly?
So this is the North Node. So it could be that instead of being the support or like the behind the scenes supportive person, you are the figurehead.
Oh, I see.
Yep.
Okay.
So
So when you're talking North Node and South Node for listeners, this is another very important piece to
yes.
your chart, but is it more so personal, business? How does it relate? Where are the relation points to that?
So I would say it heavily depends on where it is in your chart, and this is based on the houses. But for the most part, it's think of the most challenging thing for your personal, the way that life has manifested so far. Think of like the most not opposite, but the most challenging, I mean, your personal Mount Everest, and that would be the North Node.
Okay.
Yes. So I think that especially like as you pass or as you continue and maybe like half the life is already lived, you'll feel closer to the North Node now more than ever. But like something at like 15, you're gonna feel like it's so far away, right? Like at 33 right now, I feel like I'm a little bit closer, but it's certainly still, it's Kilimanjaro. It's still quite robust. But I think at like, a person who's like in their 80s, they likely are like, oh, it's just another step forward. Like it's much closer. So it
So it's a
truly,
thing that we're trying to achieve, and like you said, is it just age related that we master it or not, or is
yeah,
it due to
it takes
our?
time. You can expedite it by doing the healing work involved and becoming more self-aware through astrology or other modalities. But for the most part, if you live that long, you should be able to reach some point of that goal.
Oh, that's interesting. And so you would see that in everyone's chart, depending on where their North Node is and where their
Yes.
South Node is.
Yes. But so, as a collective, it's different. When we're dealing with eclipses, it's talking about a collective purpose or a collective driven purpose.
Hmm.
So here, down here, we have the eclipses. Solar eclipses. So eclipses have a history of being tumultuous for people in power. So like kings get assassinated. Like regimes happen, revolutions happen, like uprisings happen. Like this is a time when royalty usually is, hiding somewhere because they don't want to deal with the fallout. This is historically speaking. Now that, we're in a democracy, and now that we have lots of different types of people in power, I'm talking about like celebrity culture and things like that. And there's a lot more people out in the public view because we have social media. I think that it could kind of express itself in all these different ways. So I like to pay attention to who's breaking up with whom in the celebrity world because
Hmm.
it's very apparent. It's like It's very public. As a sign of like power shifting or power dispersing. But for a more personal touch, it's a time when a lot of information is being revealed. And if you feel uneasy during this time, so in this case, the very first eclipse will be in March, it'll be March 14th, and the period will be these 2 weeks until March 29th. If you're feeling uneasy, that's part of it. If you feel like you have to make a big decision, no, you don't. And if you absolutely do have to make a big decision, then, go to your very trusted friends, confidants alike to really get all that information that you can to make the best informed decision.
So are solar eclipses stronger than lunar eclipses or
Opposite, actually. Solar eclipses are less intense than lunar eclipses. Lunar eclipses are like it's mostly because lunar eclipses is like there's no light at night at all. And
Mhm.
so that feeling of dread or that feeling of like hopelessness might really seep in to our psyche because we're like, there's nothing illuminating us at night. Like we don't we fear the unknown. Whereas a solar eclipse, there's still light outside, even if it gets eclipsed, but
Yeah, that's
brief.
really interesting. So we have several of these eclipses happening in the spring.
Oh, we just have the one period in March. I'm just double checking here. Yep. And then it comes back around in September. So there's one in the spring and one in the fall.
Okay.
Yep.
Right. So the spring and fall. And so just in a real like grassroots way, what should people do to prepare for the eclipse, the lunar eclipses?
For the solar eclipse in Virgo this year on March 14th, it is more so about building organizations and routines that can help you get you to where you need to be. So, like, for example, if your dream is to be an opera singer and you have yet to take lessons, maybe go find a coach that can help you get to your goal. And then with that, build in a routine that helps you practice, 2 hours a day, a diet that helps and nourishes your throat, or a time to really listen to all those operas and arias that you want to sing. These are all going to support you. I believe that your schedule supports who you want to be. And so that's a great time for you to set up that. And don't worry, if you don't remember that, there's going to be plenty of opportunities that come your way that will remind you and reinforce oh, I need to figure out my routines. I need to figure out what's the ideal schedule for me.
So this sounds like a really kind of powerful time in the sense of Mars is retrograde, but then at the end of February, it goes direct. And
Hmm.
then in March, we have these eclipses starting and Venus going retrograde, kind of all in the
Yes.
same time period. So it's kind of like bam, 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 right?
Yep. 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 And a
Wow.
side of bam. Yes, exactly.
And a what, bam?
And a side of bam. It's bam, 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 and a side of bam.
Okay. So knowing that, to me, that tells me, okay, you know what? I am going to take this time right now to slow down, to rest, to be quiet, to just go with the flow, right? Because there's going to be plenty of activity happening.
Yes, yes, exactly. And then 2 weeks later, when all that is happening and all the schedules, because mind you, we're all working on a schedule, right? And as we're connecting with other human beings, as we're in relationships with other people, we have to align ourselves somehow with their schedule. And so it's not just your schedule that you're planning, you're planning to give room to another person as well. If you're in a relationship or if you have children or if you have colleagues or anything like that. So on the 14th is actually the full moon in Virgo, and still you're going to have to do a lot of research on your own for scheduling. So there's probably an old schedule that just doesn't work for you that you're just doing because you've done it year in and year out.
Mm.
And I think that this is also really prevalent from the pandemic days where we're really trying to break free from that. I know that the post-pandemic days, like, would you agree that like 2024 finally feels kind of more normal than any of the other
Oh yeah. Yeah.
like
It's
years?
amazing how we thought 2023 felt normal, but then you get to 2024, it's like, oh no, that wasn't normal at
No,
all.
that wasn't normal. This is more normal. Like
This
this
is
is
more normal.
yeah, exactly. And so I think that 2025 is when we'll actually feel like, oh, okay, this actually feels like pre-COVID. This feels like 2019. And I think that that's such a relief for everybody because we've been all struggling through this weird fog of like getting acclimated back to real life again. And so there's a lot of pandemic scheduling that I think is still ingrained within us that's going to be released on the 14th.
Oh,
So it's more so, it's less about building a new schedule and more about releasing a schedule that no longer makes sense for us.
okay.
Yes.
And then
Uh,
we have the
then the 29th is the new moon or the solar eclipse in Aries, and that's about it's actually perfect timing because as you said, Mars goes direct. It's a time where you're going to plot out all the things that you want to get done for the next 18 months.
Oh wow. Okay. So like when I hear that, I go, "Holy cow, I need to get my act together before March whatever this happens because I have to figure out the next 18 months." But I don't think it's exactly like that, right? It's more like we'll have the energy, the impetus, the ideas.
Yes.
This is why we study this, not to tell us what to do, but for us to learn how to work with the energies that are available and notice the inclinations, right?
Yes. And that's the thing. Like, I think that the universe prompts us all the time, whether it's, seeing angel numbers everywhere, repeating numbers, constantly, or finding feathers on the ground or whatever it might be. I think that the universe nudges us in the right direction.
Yeah.
And if we absolutely are going in an insanely wrong direction, that's when a tower moment happens and the universe just redirects everything so that you're on the right path. So you don't actually have to actively keep this in mind. Of course, if you want to be prolific and get ahead of it, you can always hire an astrologer or study this on your own. But it truly depends on the type of personality that you have.
Yeah. Okay, so can you pull my chart back up again? I want to comment on a couple of things.
Yeah.
One, I've never said this out loud, but looking at it here, I don't know if everyone's chart is like this. Mine feels very like geometrical. Like all I see is squares and
Yeah.
it looks kind of clean. Is that a good thing?
Yeah. So actually, my very favorite way to look at a chart, first and foremost, when first looking at it, is I count how many houses are empty or have no placements within it. So for you, it's it's mostly Aquarius season, Pisces, and Leo, and then also Scorpio, right? And then you have like a little bit of a gap here between Libra and Scorpio, and of course you have a little bit of Taurus here. Yeah. So at that point, I think about I like to ask like, Leah, would you say that during Taurus season, things are a little bit like you could breathe, like a little bit more calm? Or like Leo season, it's a little bit more calm, or Scorpio season, it feels a little bit more like you can truly be yourself and you can feel rested. I ask this because whenever there are no planets in a house, it usually means that there's nothing there for you to activate or learn about because it's already a somewhat mastered house. So
Mm-hmm.
communications, I mean, I already know you're great at communications. Whatever you learn is just going to add to the fact that you already are well polished enough, but whatever media training you get on top of that just makes you even, brighter and actually feeds into the North Node that we were talking about earlier as a figurehead, as a leader. And same for, home. We talked about how you already have this amazing gift to build safety wherever you go, and that home is a feeling and not a tangible place. And sixth house is routines. I don't know how your routines are, but I would imagine that you can kind of build a solid one with ease, would you say?
I can build a solid routine at large. Now,
Mhm.
I do struggle with a little, I don't know, ADD feeling sometimes, or just resistance to doing the things. Yeah.
Sure.
Yeah.
Yeah. But in terms of like a larger picture, like you understand, like many people don't even know how
Yes.
to, yeah, get into the routines of things, but you can at least get there. And then we have these other houses that have the planets. And so the way I look at it is that in this lifetime, there's a lot of emphasis on building relationships and handling everything that comes to the center when you have to share yourself with another person.
Because
And
that's all those planets in Gemini.
yes, yes, all the planets in Gemini, all the planets in the seventh house. So it tells me that during Gemini season, there is a lot of action happening for you. It's constantly pinging at you. It might even leak a little bit into Taurus season because there's always some planets that move a little bit faster than other planets. And then even with retrogrades, it could be that Cancer season is also still quite, heavily activated for you. Things slow down around the end of summer, though.
Yes,
So
very
I
much.
would say that, yeah, that's a great way to look at a schedule. Because astrology, when you have your birth chart, it's a built-in schedule.
That's so interesting. I also loved how you described when there's not a activity or a planet in a certain house.
Mhm.
I looked at that and go, oh wow, I don't have a lot of these things going on. But your translation is, well, you don't need a lot of things going on in those houses because you've kind of your soul's already mastered it in a certain
Yep.
way.
Yep. And there's just so much more of a focus required for you to handle these, one-to-one relationships, these partnerships of all flavors. But also with that, eighth house is shared resources. So they really go hand in hand. In this lifetime, it's all about really understanding what you need to share with somebody else and where the boundaries are and where you can give, where there's take, where all that stuff, all the dynamics within partnerships.
So when you do a reading for a person, this is what we're looking at for those who are watching. And I want to make sure we continue to explain this because I have a lot more listeners than viewers on this
Yeah.
podcast. But so we're looking at my chart as a visual. And when you do a reading for someone, this is my natal chart. And then you apply the transits and so forth that are happening in today's world over the natal chart to see how
Yeah.
they're interacting and playing together and what we might expect. Is that right?
Yes, that's correct. And so if you're watching, it's the outer circle here, the green glyphs that represent today's transit. So the transit is December 19th. And so from this, I'm able to read and then translate for you like what planets happening right now in the cosmos are affecting, you, Leah, today on December 19th. And for
Okay.
you, it's because, like you said, you have three planets in Gemini. It's just lots and lots of revisitations of old relationships across the board.
So
That's
that's happening now. That's
yeah,
not just,
yeah.
oh, I
It's
thought
been
you said that was
happening.
happening in Gemini season.
So for you, it's yeah, it happens in Gemini season, but I can see it right here. This Jupiter glyph right here is Jupiter is 14 degrees Gemini. And so it's directly activating your Saturn, which is 10 degrees, your Sun, which is 16 degrees, and Mercury, which is 18 degrees Gemini. They're all within 5 degrees of a transit Jupiter, which is 14 degrees. And so I can say with the most confidence that right now you are very much activated in terms of expanding your network, expanding your one-to-one relationships. Um, it's more so about those intimate relationships rather than, knowing an organization by and large. So it's even this, like our podcast right here, our conversation, this is very timely because we're talking about such expansive, far-reaching, deep, topics, right?
Yeah. Interesting. Okay. Well, I have another question for you before we end, but anything massive I should know about coming up in the next month for me, what I should or shouldn't do?
Well, I think I want to talk about your book proposal. So do you have a set goal, like a set date that you would like to be done with it, or is it more so like you want just a very good quality book proposal and you'd
N-
like to know timing?
no, I need to be done with it by January 5th or 6th.
Okay.
Why?
Oh, that's fine. I like to ask because what I can do just to show everyone here watching is I can show you exactly how an astrologer will look at a specific date that's important to you and tell you what the conditions are for that day.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so I'm typing in January 5th. That's your due date, your deadline.
Yeah, I
You'll
guess the 6th, but it's going to be close enough.
Okay, well we'll do that anyway. Yeah, so you're still in good graces. With Jupiter here, it's gonna be igniting all this. I mean, so I'm pulling up a chart a month from now just to see if anything nice is happening for you. So I would say, yeah, a month from now, it is major Pisces season. So I would say take advantage of this time to really explore more about healing, more about maybe if you're working on a lecture even, or this podcast is fantastic for that, but more educational materials around the healing modalities would be wonderful for you.
Gosh, how much more can I do in the healing? That's like all I do.
That's all you do, I know. But I think it's more so here because it's in the fourth house, it's more so you're hosting.
Mm.
So like I don't know if you do retreats or anything like that, but I think this would be a lovely time for you to ruminate on hosting some retreats. Or even like doing, have you ever done like a healing and creative workshop where like people write write about healing or
Oh
something like
yes.
that?
Hmm. Yeah,
Yeah. So
actually,
that would be
I'm planning a big one like that, but not until later next year, not in January.
okay. I think that this would be a fine time to just think about how it might work or
Okay.
what's the payoff for what's the result for your clients.
Is
Um,
this a good time though for the book proposal to be pitched?
book proposal to be pitched. I would say definitely wait until Aries season.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I want you to wait
Well,
until
I don't do the pitching, my agent does, so I don't have a lot of control over it.
I understand, but I think that there will be bites around Aries season more so. So yeah, they can pitch where they need to, but I think that I'm giving you an exact date, something for you to mark down. I want to see when Aries is 13 degrees, April 3rd. So I want you to write down April 3rd for me and let me know what happens on that day
Okay.
because that's when the sun crosses over to the moon in the fifth house. And the fifth house is creation. And obviously, your book proposal is creative.
Mhm.
And the fact that it activates the moon, it's just a really lovely time period that begins you really talking forefront about this creative work that talks about healing and emotionality and intelligence and all that stuff. So I think that that's actually when you'll get at least traction on at least like people responding saying, yeah, I want the full submission and all that stuff.
Okay. So this
Yeah.
is why it's so helpful, listener. Just, you're really good, Babs, I think,
Mhm.
particularly helping people in a business way and kind of a thoughtful, pragmatic, I don't know if it's timeline or timing. I mean, all of it is timing, but just in more of that way of specifics, I guess. Right? Would you say that's one of your specialties?
Oh, yes, for sure. I like to go into the nitty-gritty and I my favorite thing is to give people dates because I just like to know what happens. It's an adventure. I'm on the ride with you. I call myself your supporting astrologer because I truly want to be there almost like a hotline to be like, if you have an important speaking event, for example, and you tell me, "Oh, it's on this date," or I have a choice to do it on this other date, which one's better? I love to be that person to say, "This is better." The audience will feel this certain way this
Hmm,
is how you can approach your speech and stuff like that. I love strategizing.
that's awesome. Well, there's so many questions. We're going to have to hold the other questions for the next time we have you on. I mean, I want to talk about the Saturn returns. I want to talk about so many things, but we've gone over time. And so I just want to pause here, but say thank you for coming on and helping us. Maybe we'll have you on in a couple months to look at the second half of 2025
I'd love
and
to.
yeah,
Yeah.
get people on board with that. But tell us quickly where everyone can find you.
Yeah. So you can just find me across the board at babscheung.com, but also on all my social media handles, it's babs.chung or babs-chung. It's very easy. My SEO is very strong. I'm very proud of that.
Okay, good. And her last name is Cheung.
Yes, that's correct. Thank
Yeah.
you.
Babs, it's so good to connect with you again and see you. And I am going to come to you soon for a full reading. And I encourage other people, if you're looking for a new astrologer or it's your first time, to check out her work. And we'll connect in Manhattan really soon. How about that?
Yay,
Yeah.
exciting. I'd
Yeah.
love to.
Yeah, that'd be great. And listener, I hope you have a wonderful day and we'll see you real soon again on the Modern Sage podcast. And don't forget, you can watch these episodes on YouTube. I know most people prefer to listen, but it's there if you want to see our shiny, lovely faces, then go over there on my YouTube channel. All of my social handles are at Leah the Modern Sage, except on YouTube. It's just my name, Leah Guy. So it's super easy. Take good care. We'll see you real soon.